I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd end up in a hospital bed, fighting for her life while the man she trusted most whispered poison in her ear. But there I was, tubes running through my arms, machines beeping around me, and Daniel's hand wrapped around mine like he actually cared. My name is Rebecca Chen, and I built everything from nothing. 20 years ago, I started Chen Industries in a cramped garage with borrowed money and a dream that most people called foolish. My parents had immigrated from Taiwan with $50 in their pockets, and they taught me that hard work was the only currency that mattered. I believed them. God, how I believed them. The company grew slowly at first. Manufacturing specialized medical equipment wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary. I worked 16-hour days, sometimes sleeping on the factory floor when we had big orders. My marriage to Daniel came later, when the business was already thriving. He was charming, supportive, everything I thought I needed. He'd been a consultant I hired to help expand into international markets, and somewhere between the business meetings and late-night strategy sessions, I fell for him. That was 12 years ago. 12 years of building something together, or so I thought. The headaches started 6 months before everything fell apart. Just small ones at first, the kind you blame on stress or too much coffee. I was 52 years old, running a company worth $300 million, managing 800 employees. Headaches seemed like a normal part of the package. But they got worse. Then came the dizziness, the moments where I'd forget where I was, the morning I collapsed in the shower and Daniel found me unconscious on the tile floor. The diagnosis came fast after that. Brain tumor, aggressive, operable, but risky. Daniel held me when the doctor delivered the news. I remember crying into his shoulder, feeling his hand stroking my hair, hearing him say all the right things. We'll fight this together. You're the strongest person I know. I'm not going anywhere. The surgery was scheduled for a Friday. I spent the week before putting my affairs in order, updating my will, making sure the company would run smoothly if something happened to me. Daniel was helpful. So helpful. He brought me documents to sign, talked through contingency plans, made sure everything was organized. I signed a lot of papers that week. I trusted him to handle the details while I focused on preparing mentally for the surgery. My lawyer, Marcus Winters, had been handling my legal affairs for years, but Daniel said he'd coordinated everything with Marcus's office. No need for me to stress about the logistics. The night before surgery, I couldn't sleep. Daniel lay beside me in the hospital bed, the one they'd admitted me to for pre-op preparation. He was scrolling through his phone, and I was staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the things that could go wrong. Rebecca, he said quietly, still looking at his phone. I need you to know something. I turned my head to look at him. What is it? He finally met my eyes, and there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. If anything happens to you during this surgery, I want you to know that I'll take care of everything. The company, the estate, all of it. You don't have to worry. I squeezed his hand. I know. That's why I married you. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then he leaned down and kissed my forehead. Get some rest. Big day tomorrow. The surgery took 9 hours. I remember going under, counting backwards from 10, and then nothing. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in recovery, my head wrapped in bandages, feeling like someone had taken a sledgehammer to my skull. But I was alive. The surgeon came by and told me they'd gotten the tumor, that the operation had been successful, that I'd need time to recover, but the prognosis was good. Daniel was there when I woke up fully. He brought flowers, sat by my bedside, held my hand. For the first 2 days, he was the perfect husband. Attentive, caring, present. It was on the 3rd day that everything changed. I was still weak, still in and out of consciousness. The pain medication kept me foggy, and I'd drift off mid-conversation. Daniel thought I was asleep when he took the phone call. I heard his voice, low and urgent. Yeah, she signed everything. The revised will, the transfer documents, all of it. No, she didn't read them carefully. She trusted me to handle it. My eyes were closed, but my mind snapped to attention. What transfer documents? His voice continued. Once she's gone, Chen Industries becomes mine outright. The offshore accounts, the real estate holdings, everything. She restructured it all last week, thinking it was just standard estate planning. My heart started pounding so hard I thought the monitors would give me away. But I forced myself to stay still, to keep breathing steadily. The doctor says she's stable now, Daniel continued, but the tumor could come back. Or there could be complications. These things happen. Either way, the paperwork is solid. Marcus verified everything before she signed. He has no idea what the actual terms are, he just confirmed the documents were legally binding. There was a pause while the person on the other end spoke. 2 more days, Daniel said. I'm giving it 2 more days to see if there are any post-operative complications. If she's still stable after that, we might need to accelerate our timeline. But either way, everything is in motion. He hung up and I heard him walk closer to my bed. I kept my eyes closed, kept my breathing even. Then I felt his hand wrap around mine, and he leaned close. Just 2 more days, he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. And all of this is mine. He thought I was unconscious. He had no idea I'd heard everything. The rage that flooded through me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. This man, this person I'd trusted with my life, my business, my future, had been planning to take everything. Worse than that, his tone suggested he wasn't just waiting for me to die naturally. He was considering helping the process along. But I couldn't react. Not yet. I was weak, vulnerable, hooked up to machines in a hospital where he had access to me 24/7. If I confronted him now, if I let on that I knew, I had no idea what he might do. So I waited. I played the part of the recovering patient, weak and grateful for his attention. He brought me soup I pretended to eat, held my hand while I pretended to sleep, whispered reassurances while I planned my next move. The next morning, a nurse named Patricia came to check my vitals. She was kind, efficient, someone I'd chatted with a few times. When Daniel stepped out to get coffee, I took my chance. Patricia, I said quietly, my voice still weak from the surgery. I need your help, and I need you not to ask questions. She looked at me with concern. Mrs. Chen, are you feeling all right? Should I get the doctor? No, I said firmly. I need you to get me a phone, not my phone, a different one. One that can't be traced to me. And I need you to help me contact someone without my husband knowing. Her eyes widened. Mrs. Chen, I can't. Please, I interrupted. My life might depend on it. I can't explain everything, but I need you to trust me. Something in my expression must have convinced her, because after a long moment she nodded slowly. I have a prepaid phone in my locker. I can bring it to you during my break. Thank you, I whispered. And Patricia? If anyone asks, especially my husband, you know nothing about this. She squeezed my hand gently and left the room. An hour later, she slipped the phone under my blanket during a routine check. Daniel was back by then, sitting in the corner reading a magazine. But he didn't notice the exchange. That night, after Daniel finally left for the evening, visiting hours over, I made my calls. The first was to my oldest friend, Jennifer Martinez. We'd known each other since college, before the business, before Daniel, before everything. She was the one person I knew I could trust absolutely. Jen, I said when she answered, I need you to listen very carefully and not react. Rebecca? Her voice was worried. Oh my God, how are you? How was the surgery? I wanted to visit, but Daniel said you needed rest and… Jen, I interrupted gently. Daniel is trying to steal everything from me. Possibly worse. I need your help, and I need you to act like everything is normal. There was silence on the other end. Then quietly, tell me everything. I explained what I'd heard, what I'd pieced together. Jennifer listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was silent for a long moment. What do you need? She finally asked. I need you to contact Marcus Winters first thing tomorrow morning, I said. Tell him to pull every document I signed in the last month and review them personally. Don't tell him why over the phone, just say it's urgent. Then I need you to go to my house and get something for me. What? In my office, there's a safe behind the bookshelf, left side, third shelf. The combination is 1874. Inside, there's a folder marked Personal Contingency. Bring it to the hospital tomorrow, but don't come to my room. Give it to Patricia, the nurse. She'll get it to me. Rebecca, Jennifer said carefully, if Daniel is really planning what you think he's planning, you need to go to the police. Not yet, I said. I don't have proof of anything except some overheard conversations. Right now, I need to understand what I signed and secure my assets. Then we'll deal with Daniel. The next call was harder. I dialed my daughter's number with shaking hands. Emma Chen was 28 years old, brilliant, working on her PhD in biomedical engineering. She lived across the country, and I'd always been grateful she was far from the drama of the business world. Daniel was her stepfather, had raised her from age 16. She trusted him almost as much as I had. Mom? Her voice was thick with sleep. It's like 3 in the morning here. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart, I lied. I just wanted to hear your voice. The surgery went well. That's amazing, she said. More awake now. Daniel texted me updates. He said you were recovering great but needed rest. I was going to fly out this weekend to see you. No, I said quickly. Don't come yet. Wait a week or two. Let me get stronger first. We talked for a few more minutes, and I didn't tell her anything about Daniel. I couldn't. Not yet. She loved him, trusted him. Breaking that trust would devastate her, and I needed to be sure of my facts first. After I hung up, I lay in the dark, my mind racing. The phone was hidden under my mattress, and I tried to sleep, but every sound made me jump. Every footstep in the hallway could be Daniel, coming back to finish what the tumor hadn't. The next morning, Jennifer showed up at the hospital, looking perfectly casual, carrying a shopping bag with magazines and snacks. She chatted with Daniel in the hallway for a few minutes. I could hear them through the door, her voice bright and normal. Then she left, and 20 minutes later, Patricia did her rounds. The folder was tucked into my sheets during the vital check. I waited until Daniel went to the cafeteria for lunch before I opened it. Inside was everything I'd prepared years ago, back when I first started seeing the warning signs in Daniel's behavior. Little things, nothing concrete enough to act on, but enough to make me cautious. I'd documented irregularities in his expense reports, unusual meetings with competitors, communications with people I didn't know. I'd also kept copies of all our prenuptial agreements, the original terms of my will, and detailed records of the company's ownership structure. At the time, I'd told myself I was being paranoid. Now, I was grateful for my paranoia. Marcus Winters called my hidden phone that afternoon. Rebecca, what the hell is going on? What did you find? I asked. His voice was tight with anger. The documents you signed last week weren't what Daniel told you they were. The will revision gives him complete control of Chen Industries upon your death, with no provisions for Emma or your charitable foundations. The transfer documents moved all your liquid assets into joint accounts with automatic survivor rights. And there's a power of attorney buried in there that gives him control over your medical decisions. My stomach dropped. Medical decisions? If you're incapacitated, he can make choices about your care. Life support, treatment options, everything. I felt cold all over. Can we reverse it? Marcus hesitated. Legally, yes, but it's complicated. The documents were properly executed, witnessed, notarized. To overturn them, we'd need to prove fraud, duress, or incompetence. Given that you just had brain surgery, arguing incompetence might actually work, but it would mean admitting you weren't in your right mind when you signed. That could have implications for the company. What about fraud? We'd need evidence that Daniel misrepresented what you were signing. Do you have any? I'm working on it, I said. In the meantime, I need you to prepare new documents, completely different from what Daniel thinks exists. Can you come to the hospital tonight after visiting hours? That's irregular. Marcus, I said quietly, I think my husband is planning to kill me. There was a long silence. I'll be there at 9. The rest of the day was agony. Daniel sat by my bedside, holding my hand, telling me how proud he was of my recovery. He brought my favorite food from a restaurant across town. He read to me from a book I loved. He played the perfect husband, and I played the grateful wife, all while wanting to scream at him. When visiting hours ended, he kissed my forehead. I'll be back first thing tomorrow, he promised. Get some rest. I love you, I said, the words tasting like poison. Love you too, he replied, and walked out. Marcus arrived at 9:15, carrying a briefcase and looking grim. Patricia let him in and stood guard outside the door. We worked for 2 hours, creating a new will, new corporate documents, new powers of attorney. Everything was designed to look identical to what Daniel had me sign, but with completely different beneficiaries and terms. The real Chen Industries ownership would go into a trust controlled by a board I'd selected, with Emma as the primary beneficiary. My assets would be distributed according to my actual wishes. And the medical power of attorney went to Jennifer, not Daniel. Can we backdate these? I asked. Marcus shook his head. No, that would be fraud. But we can file them tomorrow morning with an affidavit stating that the previous documents were signed under duress and false pretenses. Once they're filed, they supersede the old ones. What about Daniel? What happens when he finds out? That depends on what he does next, Marcus said carefully. If he's really planning what you think, we'll have evidence of attempted fraud at minimum. But Rebecca, you need to be careful. If he realizes you know, if he feels cornered— I know, I interrupted. That's why we're doing this quietly. After Marcus left, I couldn't sleep. I kept the phone close, checking it obsessively. Jennifer texted me around midnight. Documents filed. It's done. You're safe now. But I didn't feel safe. I felt like a target. Daniel showed up early the next morning with breakfast and a smile. Morning, beautiful. How are you feeling? Stronger, I said truthfully. The doctor says I might be able to go home soon. His smile faltered just slightly. That's great news. But you should take your time. Make sure you're really ready. I'm ready to get out of here, I said. I miss my own bed. We ate breakfast together, and I watched him carefully. He seemed nervous, checking his phone more often than usual. Around 10, he got a call and stepped outside. When he came back, his face was pale. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine, he said quickly. Just some business stuff. Nothing to worry about. But I could see the worry in his eyes. Someone had told him about the new filings. The trap was closing, and he knew it. That afternoon, Daniel left early, claiming he had an important meeting. As soon as he was gone, Jennifer arrived with Detective Sarah Morrison from the Financial Crimes Unit. Mrs. Chen, Detective Morrison said, settling into the chair beside my bed. Your lawyer contacted us this morning about some potential fraud. I need you to tell me everything. I told her the whole story. The overheard phone call, the documents, my suspicions about Daniel's intentions. She listened carefully, taking notes. The problem is, she said when I finished, what you overheard isn't enough for charges. It's hearsay, and it could be interpreted different ways. We need more concrete evidence. What if he tries something? I asked. What if he comes back tonight and— She shook her head. We're putting a guard on your door, plainclothes. If he tries anything suspicious, we'll intervene. But Mrs. Chen, the best thing you can do is act normal. Let him think everything is fine. We're pulling his phone records, his financial statements, looking into his associates. Give us a few days. I don't have a few days, I said. He said 2 more days. That was 3 days ago. Detective Morrison's expression hardened. Then we work fast. That night was the longest of my life. The plainclothes officer was positioned down the hall, close enough to help, but far enough not to spook Daniel. I pretended to sleep, but every sound made my heart race. Daniel came back around 8. He seemed agitated, pacing the room instead of sitting. Rebecca, he said finally, we need to talk about something. I opened my eyes slowly, playing groggy. What is it? He sat on the edge of the bed, and I noticed his hands were shaking. I found out today that someone filed new corporate documents in your name. Documents that contradict what we set up last week. I blinked at him, trying to look confused. What? I don't understand. Someone's trying to interfere with your estate planning, he said, his voice tight. I think it might be Marcus. I think he's trying to take advantage of your condition. The accusation was so brazen I almost laughed. Marcus has been my lawyer for 20 years, Daniel. Why would he suddenly— I don't know, he interrupted. But we need to fix this. Tonight. I have the original documents here. We just need you to sign a statement confirming they're your true wishes. He pulled papers from his bag, and I saw the detective's warning in my mind. Act normal. Let him make his move. I'm too tired, I said weakly. Can we do this tomorrow? His jaw clenched. Rebecca, this is important. If something happens to you, if there are complications, these conflicting documents could tie up everything in court for years. Emma could lose everything. Bringing up Emma was smart. He knew it was my weak point. I reached for the papers with a shaking hand. Let me read them. You don't need to read them, he said quickly. You already signed these once. This is just a confirmation. Daniel, I said slowly, meeting his eyes. Why are you so nervous? I'm not nervous, he snapped. I'm trying to protect you. Protect us. From what? He stood up abruptly. From people who want to take what we've built. From lawyers who see a vulnerable woman and think they can manipulate her into changing her will. Is that what you think you did? I asked quietly. Manipulated a vulnerable woman? His face went red. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I sat up straighter in the bed, ignoring the pain in my head. I heard you, Daniel. 3 days ago when you thought I was asleep. I heard you on the phone, talking about how you'd gotten me to sign everything, how you were waiting to see if there would be complications, how in 2 more days, everything would be yours. The color drained from his face. Rebecca, I can explain. Explain what? I said, my voice rising. Explain how you were planning to steal my company? Explain how you had me sign away everything I built? Explain what you meant by complications? You don't understand, he said, backing toward the door. That conversation was taken out of context. The plainclothes officer appeared in the doorway, his badge visible now. Mr. Chen, I need you to stay right where you are. Daniel's eyes went wild. This is insane. Rebecca, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Detective Morrison walked in behind the officer, and 2 more uniformed police followed her. Daniel Chen, you're being detained for questioning regarding fraudulent financial activities and conspiracy to commit fraud. This is harassment, Daniel said, but his voice was shaking. I haven't done anything wrong. We have recordings of your phone conversations, Detective Morrison said calmly. We have testimonies from your associates, and we have evidence that you systematically manipulated your wife into signing documents that would transfer her assets to you under false pretenses. You're going to want to call a lawyer. As they led him away, Daniel looked back at me one last time. Rebecca, please, don't do this. I met his eyes and saw nothing there but calculation. Even now, he was trying to figure out how to manipulate me, how to turn this around. I already did it, I said quietly. After they took him away, I sat in the hospital bed, shaking. Jennifer rushed in and wrapped her arms around me, and I finally let myself cry. It's over, she whispered. You're safe now. But it wasn't over. Not really. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, depositions, and media attention. The story of the corporate executive who'd caught her husband trying to steal her company made national news. Chen Industries' stock took a hit initially, but once the board issued a statement confirming my recovery and continued leadership, it stabilized. The investigation uncovered far more than I'd suspected. Daniel had been planning this for over 2 years. He'd been having an affair with a woman named Michelle Carr, who'd been helping him funnel company money into offshore accounts. They'd planned to wait until I died from the tumor, then take everything and disappear together. When the surgery was successful, they'd considered staging an accident or medical complication. Detective Morrison came to my hospital room 1 week after Daniel's arrest with a thick folder of evidence. Mrs. Chen, she said, sitting down heavily in the visitor's chair. We've been building this case nonstop, and what we've found goes deeper than we initially thought. How deep? I asked, not sure I wanted to know. She opened the folder and pulled out printed emails. Daniel had been corresponding with Michelle Carr for 3 years, not 2. They met at a business conference in Miami where you sent him to represent the company. The affair started immediately, but the financial planning came later, about 6 months into their relationship. I felt sick. 3 years. I'd celebrated our 9th anniversary with him right in the middle of his affair. It gets worse, Morrison continued. Michelle worked for a consulting firm that specialized in corporate restructuring. She knew exactly how to help Daniel position himself to take over your assets. They researched case law about spousal inheritance, studied estate planning strategies, even consulted with a shady lawyer in the Cayman Islands about how to move money offshore without triggering IRS alerts. She showed me printouts of their messages. Some were romantic, talking about their future together on a beach somewhere. But most were coldly strategic. Daniel discussing my health, my work schedule, my stress levels. Michelle advising him on which documents to prepare, how to time the requests, when to act concerned versus when to seem casual. One email stopped me cold. It was from Daniel to Michelle, dated just 2 weeks before my surgery. The tumor is our gift, he'd written. Natural cause, no questions asked. Just need to make sure the paperwork is solid before the operation. If she makes it through, we reassess. If she doesn't, we're set for life." I read it 3 times, each word cutting deeper. He'd seen my illness, my potential death, as a gift. "There's more," Morrison said quietly. "We found evidence that Daniel was actually hoping the surgery would fail. He researched surgical complications, read medical studies about post-operative strokes and infections. We found browser history where he was looking up how to induce medical complications without detection." My hands were shaking. Was he planning to actually do something? During my recovery? "We think so," Morrison said. "We found a vial in his car. Small thing, would have been easy to miss. We sent it to the lab, and it came back as potassium chloride. High doses can cause cardiac arrest, and if administered to someone already medically fragile, it could look like a natural complication." The room spun. He was going to kill me, not just steal from me, not just wait for nature to take its course. He was actively planning to murder me. "When?" I whispered. "We think within the next day or 2, Morrison said. "Based on his communications with Michelle, they were getting nervous about your recovery. You were getting stronger faster than expected." The window was closing. So when I overheard him on the phone, I managed to say, "That wasn't just about fraud. That was him finalizing plans to murder me." "We believe so? Yes." Jennifer was in the room too, sitting quietly in the corner. She stood up and came to hold my hand. "You saved your own life, Rebecca. If you hadn't been awake, if you hadn't heard him, if you hadn't acted when you did." "I know," I said, squeezing her hand. "I know. The prosecutor wants to add attempted murder to the charges," Morrison said. "With this evidence, we have a strong case. But I need to prepare you for what the trial will be like. Daniel's defense will try to argue that he never actually harmed you, that the potassium chloride was for some other purpose, that the emails were just fantasy. They'll paint you as paranoid, possibly affected by the brain surgery. It's going to get ugly." "Let it get ugly," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I want everyone to know exactly what he planned. I want everyone to see who he really is." Over the next few weeks, more details emerged. Daniel had been skimming from the company for years, small amounts that wouldn't trigger audits. He'd set up shell corporations, fake vendor accounts, elaborate schemes to siphon money. Michelle had helped him hide it all in offshore accounts across 3 different countries. The total amount stolen was over $12 million. $12 million that could have gone to research and development, to employee benefits, to the charitable foundations I'd established. Instead, it had been sitting in bank accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, waiting for my death to make it accessible. Marcus and I spent hours going through every financial record, every transaction, rebuilding the paper trail. The company's CFO, Thomas Martinez, was devastated when he realized how long the theft had been going on under his nose. "I should have caught this," he said during one late-night meeting in my home office. "I've been doing this job for 8 years, Rebecca. How did I miss it?" "Because you trusted him," I said simply. "We all did. That's what made him effective." The board called an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Some members wanted to keep it quiet, worried about the stock price and public perception, but I disagreed. "We're going public with everything," I announced. "Full transparency. We'll explain what happened, what we're doing to prevent it in the future, and how we're recovering the stolen funds. Our stakeholders deserve the truth." "Rebecca, that could tank our stock price," one board member argued. "Our stock price is built on trust," I countered. "If we hide this and it comes out later, we'll never recover that trust. But if we're honest now, if we show that we're strong enough to face this head-on, we'll come out stronger." The vote was 8-3 in favor of transparency. The press conference was brutal. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed constantly, and I stood at the podium feeling exposed and raw. But I told the truth. All of it. "My husband betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible," I said. My voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "He betrayed our marriage, our company, and everyone who trusted us. But Chen Industries is bigger than one person's greed. We're taking steps to recover every dollar stolen, we're implementing new oversight protocols, and we're moving forward." "Will you be stepping down?" a reporter shouted. "Absolutely not," I replied. "I built this company from nothing, and I'm not letting anyone take it from me. Not my ex-husband, and not fear." The stock did drop initially, 12% in the first week. But then something unexpected happened. Orders started coming in, new contracts, new partnerships. Companies that had been on the fence about working with us suddenly wanted in. Jennifer called me one evening, excited. "Do you know why everyone's suddenly interested in Chen Industries?" "Why?" "Because you showed strength," she said. "You didn't hide, you didn't make excuses, you didn't let a man's betrayal define you. Every woman in business is watching you right now, and they're seeing what's possible." The trial preparation consumed months of my life. Depositions, evidence review, meetings with prosecutors. I had to relive every moment of the betrayal, explain every detail, justify every decision I'd made. The hardest part was preparing Emma for what would come out in court. We sat in my living room one Sunday afternoon, and I walked her through everything the prosecution planned to present. "They're going to show the emails," I said gently. "The ones between Daniel and Michelle. Some of them are very explicit, both romantically and in terms of their planning. I wanted you to hear it from me first." Emma's face was pale but determined. "I can handle it, Mom. I need to be there. I need to see this through with you." "You don't have to," I assured her. "This isn't your burden." "Yes, it is," she said firmly. "He was my stepfather. I loved him. I trusted him. I need to face what he really was, not just hear about it secondhand." The preliminary hearings started in January. Daniel showed up in an expensive suit, his lawyer by his side, looking every bit the successful businessman. When our eyes met across the courtroom, he had the audacity to look hurt, like I was the one who'd betrayed him. His lawyer, a sharp woman named Victoria Cross, argued that the whole case was a misunderstanding, that the revised estate documents were legitimate, that Daniel had been acting in my best interests, that my post-surgical confusion had led me to misinterpret innocent conversations. "Your Honor," Cross said smoothly, "my client is a devoted husband who spent 12 years supporting his wife's career. The prosecution would have you believe he's some sort of criminal mastermind, but the evidence shows a man who was trying to protect his family's assets during a medical crisis." The prosecutor, a bulldog of a man named Richard Chen, no relation, stood up with fire in his eyes. "Your Honor, the defendant was found with potassium chloride in his vehicle. He researched methods to induce cardiac arrest. His communications explicitly discussed waiting for his wife to die so he could claim her assets. This isn't confusion or misunderstanding. This is premeditated attempted murder and fraud." The judge, an older woman named Margaret Reynolds, listened to both sides with an impassive expression. "I'll review the evidence and issue a ruling on whether this goes to trial," she said. Court adjourned. I walked out of that courthouse feeling drained. Jennifer drove me home, and we sat in silence most of the way. "Do you think he'll go to trial?" she finally asked. "I hope so," I said. "I want him to face every single piece of evidence. I want a jury to hear what he planned." 3 weeks later, Judge Reynolds ruled that there was sufficient evidence for trial. The date was set for April, 3 months away. Those 3 months were a strange limbo. I threw myself into work, restructuring the company's financial oversight, implementing new protocols, rebuilding what Daniel had damaged. But at night, alone in the house we'd shared, I struggled. I'd wake up from nightmares where I was back in the hospital bed, paralyzed, watching Daniel inject something into my IV. Or I'd dream that the trial had ended with an acquittal, that he was free and coming for me. Dr. Kim, my therapist, helped me work through the trauma. "PTSD is common after attempted murder," she explained during one session. "Your brain is trying to process an event where someone you loved tried to kill you. That's not something you just get over." "How do I move past it?" I asked. "You don't move past it," she said gently. "You move through it. You feel the fear, acknowledge it, and then you take the next step anyway. That's courage, Rebecca. Not the absence of fear, but action despite it." I started taking self-defense classes. It seemed silly at first, learning to fight when the real danger had been emotional and financial manipulation. But there was something empowering about knowing I could physically defend myself if needed. The instructor, a former military woman named Lisa Stone, pushed me hard. "You're holding back," she said one day after I'd failed to land a proper punch. "You're afraid of your own strength." "I'm not afraid," I protested. "Yes, you are," she said bluntly. "You've spent your whole life being measured, controlled, appropriate. Someone tried to kill you and you're still worried about being too aggressive. Let it out, Rebecca. Get angry. Something broke open in me. I hit the punching bag with everything I had over and over until my knuckles were raw and tears were streaming down my face. Lisa just stood there, letting me work through it. When I finally stopped, exhausted and shaking, she handed me water. Better? Much, I admitted. The anger is useful, she said. Don't bury it. Channel it. I channeled it into the trial preparation. Richard Chen, the prosecutor, met with me twice a week to go over testimony, anticipate defense strategies, prepare for cross-examination. Victoria Cross is going to come at you hard, he warned. She'll try to make you seem vindictive, emotionally unstable, possibly impaired from the brain surgery. She'll suggest you misheard the phone conversation, that you're projecting your own insecurities onto innocent actions. Let her try, I said. I know what I heard. I know what I found. And the evidence speaks for itself. The trial started on a Monday in April. The courthouse was packed with reporters, spectators, people who'd followed the case in the media. I wore a simple navy suit, my hair pulled back to show the scar from my surgery. I wanted the jury to see it, to remember what I'd survived. Daniel sat at the defense table, looking smaller somehow than he had during our marriage. Michelle Carr had already taken a plea deal in exchange for testimony, and she sat in the gallery, avoiding everyone's eyes. The prosecution's opening statement was powerful. Richard Chen laid out the timeline, the evidence, the cold calculation behind Daniel's actions. He showed the jury emails, financial records, the vial of potassium chloride. This is not a case of marital dispute, he said, his voice ringing through the courtroom. This is a case of attempted murder for financial gain. The defendant saw his wife's illness as an opportunity, and when she survived, he prepared to finish the job himself. Victoria Cross's opening was equally strong. She painted Daniel as a loving husband, overwhelmed by his wife's illness, making difficult decisions in a crisis. She suggested that the emails were taken out of context, that the financial arrangements were prudent estate planning, that the potassium chloride was for legitimate purposes she'd revealed during the defense case. My testimony came on day 3. I took the stand with my heart pounding, and Richard Chen walked me through everything. My relationship with Daniel, the company we'd built, the tumor diagnosis, the surgery. Then he asked about the phone call. I closed my eyes, remembering. I was in the hospital bed, I said. I'd just had brain surgery 3 days before. Daniel thought I was asleep, but I was awake. Foggy from the medication, but awake. I heard him take a call, and I heard him say that I'd signed everything, that the documents were solid, that he just needed to wait 2 more days to see if there were complications. What did you understand him to mean by complications? Richard asked. I understood that he was waiting to see if I would die naturally from post-surgical complications, and if I didn't, he was planning to create those complications himself. Objection, Victoria Cross shouted. Speculation. Sustained, Judge Reynolds said. The jury will disregard the witness's interpretation. But the damage was done. The jury had heard it. Cross-examination was brutal. Victoria Cross spent hours trying to poke holes in my story, suggesting I'd been confused, medicated, paranoid. Isn't it true, Mrs. Chen, that you were on significant pain medication at the time of this alleged phone call? Yes, I admitted. And isn't it true that pain medication can cause confusion, even hallucinations? It can, I said. But I wasn't hallucinated. I heard him clearly. You just had brain surgery, she pressed. A traumatic, dangerous operation. Isn't it possible that your perception was affected? My perception was fine, I said firmly. And even if you don't believe I heard correctly, the evidence supports what I'm saying. The emails, the stolen money, the potassium chloride, all of it confirms what I heard. She switched tactics. You've been married to my client for 12 years, correct? Yes. 12 years of partnership, of building a business together, of sharing a life. And now you're asking this jury to believe that all of it was a lie? I met her eyes. I'm asking them to look at the evidence and draw their own conclusions. I wish it had been different. I wish the man I married had been real. But the facts are the facts. The prosecution called witness after witness. Financial experts who explained the offshore accounts. Michelle Carr, who testified about the planning, the affair, the specific conversations about waiting for my death. The pharmacist who confirmed that potassium chloride in the concentration found in Daniel's car had no legitimate personal use. Emma testified too, though it broke my heart to watch. She explained how Daniel had always seemed supportive, how she'd never suspected anything was wrong, how devastated she was to learn the truth. "He was my stepfather," she said, her voice shaking. "I trusted him. He gave me advice about my career, came to my graduation, acted like he cared about my future. And the whole time, he was planning to steal from my mother, to kill her. I'll never forgive him for that." The defense case was weaker. Victoria Cross called character witnesses who talked about Daniel's business acumen, his charm, his apparent devotion to me. She suggested that the offshore accounts were legitimate tax planning, that the affair with Michelle was wrong but not criminal, that the potassium chloride had been in his car because he was considering suicide, not murder. It was a desperate strategy, and the jury didn't seem to buy it. Daniel testified on his own behalf, which surprised everyone. He took the stand looking humble, remorseful, but maintained his innocence. "I never intended to harm my wife," he said. "I love Rebecca. Everything I did was to protect our assets, to ensure the company would survive if something happened to her." The phone conversation was taken out of context. I was stressed, overwhelmed, talking to a financial advisor about contingency planning. Richard Chen destroyed him on cross-examination. "Mr. Chen, you testified that you love your wife. Is that correct?" "Yes," Daniel said. "And yet you were having an affair with Michelle Carr for 3 years?" "That was a mistake," Daniel admitted. "But it doesn't mean I didn't care about Rebecca." Richard pulled out an email and read it aloud. "This is from you to Michelle Carr, dated 6 months ago. Quote, 'Can't wait until this is over and we can start our real life together. Rebecca is a means to an end, nothing more.' End quote. Does that sound like love to you, Mr. Chen?" Daniel's face went red. "That was written in anger during a fight with my wife. People say things they don't mean." "What about this one?" Richard pulled out another email. Quote, "The tumor is our gift. Just need to make sure she doesn't recover too quickly. We've waited 3 years. We can wait a few more weeks." End quote. "Were you angry when you wrote that too?" "I was scared," Daniel said weakly. "Scared about what would happen to the business, to our financial security." "You were scared that your wife would survive," Richard interrupted. "That's what you were scared of, wasn't it? Because if she survived, you couldn't claim her fortune." "That's not true," Daniel protested. "Then explain the potassium chloride in your vehicle. I told you, I was depressed considering—" "You're a liar," Richard said flatly. "You planned to murder your wife, and the only reason you didn't succeed is because she was strong enough and smart enough to stop you." The closing arguments were powerful on both sides, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Emma flew home when the news broke. I'll never forget the look on her face when she walked into my hospital room. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. He was always so nice to me, so supportive. I never thought—" "I know, honey," I said, pulling her into a hug. "He fooled all of us." "How did you figure it out?" she asked. "I got lucky," I said, "or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. I was supposed to be unconscious when he made that phone call. The universe gave me a chance to hear the truth. What are you going to do now?" "Keep building," I said simply. "Keep fighting. That's all I've ever known how to do." The trial took 6 months. I testified, explaining what I'd heard, what I'd felt, the fear of those days in the hospital when I didn't know if I'd wake up. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Daniel Chen was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. I didn't feel triumph when the verdict was read. I felt exhausted. This man had been my partner for 12 years. We'd shared a life, a home, dreams about the future. Learning it had all been a lie was like finding out my whole adult life had been built on sand. But I also felt something else: relief, gratitude, a strange kind of strength I hadn't known I possessed. Jennifer drove me home from the courthouse. "You know what the craziest part is?" I said as we pulled into my driveway. "What?" "I was ready to give him everything," I said. "If he'd just been patient, if he'd actually loved me and waited, he would have inherited most of it anyway." The prenup was generous. I was planning to make him co-CEO when I retired. He could have had it all legitimately. But he couldn't wait, Jennifer said. Because it was never about loving you. It was about controlling you. She was right. That's what hurt most. Not the betrayal itself, but realizing that every moment of our marriage might have been a performance. Every I love you might have been strategic. Every kind gesture might have been an investment in his eventual payday. I spent the next year rebuilding. Not just the company, though, that needed attention after all the drama. I rebuilt myself. I started therapy, working through the trauma of the betrayal, the surgery, everything. My therapist, Dr. Rachel Kim, helped me understand that what Daniel did wasn't a reflection of my worth or my judgment. It was a reflection of his own moral bankruptcy. You trusted someone, Dr. Kim said during one session. That's not a weakness. That's what makes us human. The fact that he abused that trust is his failure, not yours. I also rebuilt my relationship with Emma. We'd always been close, but the situation with Daniel had created a weird tension. She felt guilty for not seeing through him, and I felt guilty for exposing her to him in the first place. We spent a weekend together at a cabin in the mountains, just talking. No phones, no business, no distractions. I keep thinking about all the times he gave me advice, Emma said one night as we sat by the fireplace. About my career, my relationships. Was any of it real? Did he actually care about me, or was I just part of the long game? I think he cared about you in his own way, I said honestly. You were useful to him, sure. But I also think he saw you as his daughter. People are complicated. He can be a manipulative criminal and still have had genuine moments with you. How do you do that? She asked. How do you find nuance in what he did? Because if I don't, I said slowly, if I let myself believe that every single moment was a lie, then I lose 12 years of my life. I lose the memory of building the business together, the trips we took, the conversations we had. Some of it had to be real, even if the foundation was rotten. Otherwise, I'll go crazy trying to figure out what was true. Emma nodded slowly. I'm angry at him, she said. So angry. But I'm also angry at myself for not seeing it. You couldn't have seen it, I assured her. He was good at hiding it. That's what made him dangerous. Chen Industries thrived in the aftermath. The publicity actually helped in a weird way. People respected that I'd caught the fraud, that I'd had the strength to prosecute my own husband. We got new contracts, new partnerships. The board even approached me about going public, something I'd always resisted. I thought about it seriously for the first time. Emma was working on revolutionary biomedical research. If Chen Industries went public, we could fund entire research divisions, push the boundaries of medical technology, create jobs, change lives. 6 months after the trial ended, I called a board meeting. I'm taking the company public, I announced, but with conditions. 20% of all profits go to a foundation supporting women in STEM fields. The company constitution will include mandatory ethics training for all executives. And I'm creating an employee stock ownership program that gives our workers a real stake in our success. The board agreed unanimously. The IPO happened on a bright Tuesday morning in October. I stood on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with Emma beside me, watching the numbers climb. Chen Industries was now worth over $1 billion. My phone rang as we were leaving the exchange. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. Rebecca? The voice was Daniel's, thin and distant. He was calling from prison. What do you want? I asked coldly. I heard about the IPO, he said. Congratulations. You did it. We did it, I corrected him. The foundation was built while we were together, even if you had ulterior motives. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, he finally said. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. Sorry you got caught? I asked. Or sorry you did it? Both, he admitted. I know you won't believe this, but there were real moments, real feelings. I did love you, in my way. Your way wasn't enough, I said. Love isn't about what you can take from someone. It's about what you're willing to give. I know that now, he said quietly. Too late. But I know. Why did you call, Daniel? Because you deserved to hear me say it. You deserved an apology, even if you don't accept it. And because I wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. What you've built. What you've become. You are always stronger than I gave you credit for. I felt tears on my cheeks, but my voice was steady. Goodbye, Daniel. Goodbye, Rebecca. I hung up and deleted the number. Emma looked at me with concern. You okay, Mom? I nodded. Yeah, I really am. 2 years after the trial, I met someone new. His name was James Park, and he ran a nonprofit that provided clean water infrastructure in developing countries. We met at a charity gala where Chen Industries was a sponsor. He had no idea who I was when we started talking, which was refreshing. He just knew I was someone interested in his work, and we spent an hour discussing water purification systems and sustainable development. When he finally realized I was Rebecca Chen, the billionaire CEO who'd made headlines prosecuting her husband, he was embarrassed. I'm sorry, I should have recognized you. I laughed. Please don't be. It's nice to be seen as just a person for a change. We started dating slowly. I was cautious, hyper-aware of red flags, probably too guarded. But James was patient. He understood that trust was something I had to rebuild carefully. On our 6th date, we were walking through a park, and he turned to me suddenly. Rebecca, I need to tell you something. My stomach clenched. What? I looked you up, he said. I read about what happened with your ex-husband, and I understand if that makes you hesitant to trust anyone again. But I want you to know that I'm not interested in your money or your company. I have my own work, my own purpose. I'm interested in you, the person who fights for what she believes in, the person who had the courage to stand up to someone she loved when he betrayed her. I felt something in my chest loosen. Thank you for saying that. He took my hand. And I want you to know that you can verify anything about me. My finances, my history, my intentions. I have nothing to hide, and I want you to feel safe. It was such a simple offer, but it meant everything. We've been together for 3 years now. He proposed last month, and I said yes. But this time, I'm going into marriage with my eyes open. I have a prenup that protects both of us. I have separate accounts, separate assets. Not because I don't trust James, but because I've learned that protecting yourself isn't the same as not loving someone. Emma is getting married too, to a wonderful person she met in graduate school. She's developing technology that could revolutionize how we detect and treat brain tumors. The irony isn't lost on either of us. Chen Industries continues to grow. We've expanded into renewable energy, sustainable manufacturing, and medical research. The foundation has given scholarships to over 5,000 women pursuing STEM degrees. Sometimes, late at night, I think about those days in the hospital. The moment I heard Daniel's voice, cold and calculating, planning to take everything I'd built. The terror of realizing I was completely vulnerable, at the mercy of someone who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to overcome. But I also think about what I found in myself during those days. The strength to stay calm when I wanted to scream. The courage to fight back when it would have been easier to give up. The wisdom to ask for help instead of trying to handle everything alone. Daniel took a lot from me. He took my trust, my sense of safety, 12 years of my life. But he didn't take everything. He didn't take my company, my determination, or my ability to love again. In a twisted way, he gave me something too. He showed me how strong I really was. He proved that I could face the worst betrayal imaginable and come out the other side not just surviving, but thriving. I still have the scar from the brain surgery. It's hidden under my hair, but I can feel it when I run my fingers over my scalp. Some people might see it as a mark of weakness, a reminder of vulnerability. I see it as a battle scar, proof that I fought and won. The other day, a young woman approached me after a speaking engagement. She worked for one of our suppliers, and she'd heard my story. Mrs. Chen, she said nervously, I think my business partner might be stealing from me. I don't have proof, but I have this feeling, and I don't know what to do. I sat down with her for an hour, sharing what I'd learned. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Build a support system. Don't confront until you're ready. Protect yourself first, then seek justice. She thanked me with tears in her eyes. You saved your company by being brave. I hope I can do the same. After she left, I thought about all the women out there facing similar situations. Betrayals big and small. Partners who saw them as resources instead of people. People who underestimated their strength. That's why I started giving talks, why I agreed to write a book about my experience, why I use my platform to speak about financial literacy, and protecting yourself in business and personal relationships. Not because I want to relive the trauma, but because I want other women to know that they can survive it. That being trusting doesn't make you weak. That asking for help doesn't make you incompetent. That fighting back doesn't make you vindictive. It makes you human. It makes you strong. Last week, I visited the hospital where I had my surgery. They'd asked me to speak at an event for brain tumor survivors, and I couldn't say no. Walking through those halls again was surreal. I remembered being wheeled through them on a gurney, terrified of what was happening inside my skull. I remembered lying in that bed, pretending to be asleep while my husband plotted against me. But now I was walking through those same halls on my own 2 feet, healthy and whole and free. The speech went well. I talked about survival, about resilience, about the unexpected challenges that come after the medical battle is over. People cried, people laughed, people came up to me afterward to share their own stories. As I was leaving, I passed the room where I'd stayed. A different patient was in there now, surrounded by family. I stood in the doorway for a moment, remembering. A nurse noticed me. "Mrs. Chen, are you all right?" I turned and saw it was Patricia, the nurse who'd helped me when I needed it most. "Patricia," I said warmly, "I'm more than all right." We hugged and she whispered in my ear, "I always knew you were a fighter." After I left the hospital, I sat in my car for a long time, just thinking. About the journey I'd been on. About the person I'd been before the diagnosis, before the betrayal, before everything changed. That Rebecca had been strong, but also naive. She'd believed that hard work and good intentions were enough. She'd trusted too easily, assumed the best in people, thought that loyalty was a universal value. This Rebecca, the one sitting in the car 2 years later, knew better. She knew that the world was complicated. That people were capable of both great kindness and terrible cruelty, sometimes within the same person. That protecting yourself wasn't cynical. It was smart. But this Rebecca also knew something else. That survival wasn't enough. That healing meant more than just escaping danger. It meant rebuilding trust in others and in yourself. It meant believing that the future could be better than the past. I started the car and drove toward home, toward James, toward Emma, toward the life I'd fought so hard to reclaim. The scar on my head would never go away. The memories of Daniel's betrayal would never completely fade. Some wounds leave permanent marks. But scars are proof of healing. They're evidence that your body fought back, that it refused to surrender, that it knitted itself back together despite the damage. I wore my scars proudly now. The visible one under my hair and the invisible ones in my heart. Because I was still here, still building, still fighting, still loving. Daniel had whispered that everything would be his in 2 days. He'd been so confident, so certain that he'd won. He'd been wrong about everything. I'd shattered his plans, yes, but more than that, I'd shattered the illusion that anyone could take from me what I wasn't willing to give. I'd proven that strength wasn't about never being vulnerable. It was about how you responded when vulnerability was weaponized against you. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw James on the porch, waiting for me. He smiled and waved, and I felt that warm certainty that comes from choosing someone with your eyes open, from building something real on a foundation of honesty. This was my life now. Not the one I'd planned, not the one I'd expected, but the one I'd fought for and earned. And it was mine. Completely, utterly, irrevocably mine. No one could take that away again. I walked up the steps and into James's arms, and for the first time in years, I felt truly safe. Not because I was protected from every possible harm, but because I knew, deep in my bones, that whatever came next, I could handle it. I'd survive the worst. Everything else was just details. The hero's journey isn't about slaying dragons or finding treasure. It's about discovering that the strength you need has been inside you all along. It's about learning that falling doesn't make you weak, but getting back up makes you invincible. I'd fallen so far, into darkness and betrayal and fear. But I'd gotten back up, and I was still standing.